Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to show you what I think is the best way to mount a scope on a Swiss K-31 rifle. Whenever you hear people talk about the most accurate bolt action rifles of all time as far as military rifles go, you will usually hear them mention the K-31, the Swedish Mauser, and the Finn M39. People will argue about some others, but if you took a consensus, I think those would probably be the top three. So I do not have a Swedish Mauser, but I do have a Finn M39. Actually, I have three of them, and I have two K-31s, and I think the K-31 edges it out on accuracy a little bit, but it definitely edges it out on everything else. Ergonomics, the bolt design. I love the Finn M39, but it still has that Mosin bolt. It's just a terrible bolt in my opinion. So what I'm going to be using here is the Swiss Products K-31 mount. Now what I'm doing today will make no permanent changes to the rifle. I am all about trying to keep these guns in their original condition when all possible, especially a rifle like the K-31. There weren't a relatively large amount of them made in the scope of things, so keeping them original to me is something very important. So this mount just clamps on, and it's actually really stable. I actually had this on the rifle before, but the scope that I had on it failed on me, so I took it off until I could set aside the money to get another scope. So some of the things I have laid out on the table here are what I'm going to need to do the best job I know how to mount this scope. And I am not a long range shooter. I don't really have access to long range, but my eyes aren't very good. If I could wear contacts, I would probably be alright, but I have an issue where my left eye dries out no matter what I do when I wear contacts. So with glasses, I have a real hard time focusing, keeping the rear sight and the front sight in focus. So putting a scope on this, even for 50 or 100 yard range, is going to really help me out and let me squeeze the best accuracy out of one of these rifles. So I did a little research on what the best budget scopes are right now. I didn't want to spend more than $100. So what I got here is a 4-12 Bushnell Banner Dusk and Dawn. It has really good reviews. I bought it off of Amazon, and just checking it out here in the house, the glass seems really clear, and I think I'm going to be pretty happy with it. I bought a set of Vortex 1-inch rings. I have my blue Loctite, which is very important. Something that you don't have to have, but it is great if you do a lot of tinkering with guns, especially things like scope mounts or handguard mounting where the torque is kind of important. These are really nice little torque screwdrivers. Basically, they don't come with very many bits, so I found on Amazon this pretty inexpensive set that's got everything you could ever need basically. So that is what I have to get this job done. Also, I have a small level that I forgot to lay out, but I will use that as well. So I'm going to get this all set up and we'll start putting this mount on. Okay guys, the first thing I did here was get the gun mounted in my vise and shim the back of it and find a flat spot on the rifle to level it. So that way I can level the scope once I get it on there and I don't have to just go by looks. So I have the mount kind of mocked up here. It's not attached yet, but as you can see, it goes on the side here, and basically it just has this little clamp here and a screw that goes in from this side, and it just clamps to this part of the receiver here. It may seem like that wouldn't be very sturdy, but it is. I had this mounted before and it held zero just fine until my scope broke. One of the bad things about this mount is that it is off-center. Really the only way to do it on this rifle without permanently modifying it. So you do have a choice to make as far as what distance you want to zero it, because you're going to have to offset this scope since it's not lined up with the bore. but that's a story for another day. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this mounted on here, and I'm just going to drop a little bit of blue Loctite onto this screw. Doesn't take much. And then I'm just going to kind of hand tighten it for now. Oops. The instructions don't say how tight you're supposed to make this, so I'm just going to have to kind of guess. And there we go, perfectly level, so that's a good sign. Okay, I have the fat wrench manual out here, and it says for common scope base mounts to use 18 to 20 inch-pounds. So that's what I'm going to set this thing to, and I'm going to show you how I do that. You can see this little chart here, it's graduated. You're just going to basically tighten this until you get up to where you want. And there, that looks like about 18 inch-pounds. So that's what I'm going to go with. Okay, I have the correct bit on here now, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. And you can hear those clicks, that means I'm already there. So we're good. The base is mounted now. It's Loctited, it's level, and we're good. So now I'm going to get onto mounting the rings. Okay guys, now I'm going to get ready to install the scope bases. And one thing I noticed when I opened this up was that the screws in here are a little bit oily. And if you're going to be using Loctite, you want to degrease the screws or whatever hardware it has before you apply it, or else it's never going to cure right. So I just have some alcohol swabs here, and I'm going to rub these down and try to get the inside here. Try to give that Loctite a better chance of setting up properly. Definitely use Loctite, guys. Don't ever mount a scope without it, because you go through all that trouble mounting it properly, getting it sighted in, and then if it works loose, you're just gonna be pretty pissed. When you get a set of scope mounts, make sure you pay attention to the orientation of this piece here, because usually it's just supposed to go on one way. Okay guys, I'm back. My idiocy can be your learning experience. I had to get a different set of rings out because the Vortex ones I bought don't fit this base. So be smarter than me and check your sizes before you order stuff. Luckily I had this other set. They're kind of cheap, but they held on the other ones, so we'll see how they do. First off, I'm just going to kind of set these on here and then lay the scope on it to kind of give myself an idea of how far back I want to mount the scope. It has pretty good eye relief, so I don't need to try to bring it back very far. So I'm going to get that out and lay it on here, and we'll see how it looks. Probably going to go with that. So I'm going to tighten the base down. I already have my fat wrench adjusted, so I'm going to take this back off for now and start tightening these down. I have it set at 25 inch-pounds. I'm just going to start it with a regular screwdriver and then finish up with the fat wrench. You don't want to clamp one down real hard and then do the other one. You want to kind of go back and forth so that you make sure it's even. Kind of like tightening lug nuts on a tire. sounds good. Okay, so I got the rifle, or I got the scope set in here with the proper side facing up this time. And I'm just going to level it by this top adjustment. Has a flat surface, and hope they did a good job at centering the reticle when they built it. And I'm going to start. I already hand tighten these just to barely snug. So I'm going to get them a little closer. I'm aiming for 15 inch-pounds. You want to alternate and make sure you're trying to keep the gap between the top and bottom part of the scope ring even. Alright, I got the fat wrench set at 15 inch-pounds. So I'm just going to basically do the same thing. Alternate them, try to keep them even. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to take it out of my vise here and look through it and see how it looks. And I'll be back. Okay guys, I just looked through this and it really feels great. I think I have it set in the perfect spot. It's going to be really comfortable. I'm pretty impressed with the scope. The glass looks quite clear for, I think I paid $70 or $75 for the scope. I've actually bought cheaper scopes before. I have a UTG on my Mosin, one of those long eye relief scopes that you can mount on the front sight dovetail by taking the rear sight base off, so it's not a permanent modification. You can always return it back to normal. And that scope has held 0 since 2012, and I have shot the hell out of that rifle. So sometimes a cheap scope can turn out alright. I'm not hunting or anything important, so I don't really feel the need to spend a whole lot of money on scopes. But I think this is going to be really comfortable. Next thing that I'm going to do, I'm not going to film it, but I have about a 20-yard area from my living room to my back door that I can laser bore sight this inside, and that's what I do for any scopes I mount or red dots. I do it inside with a laser at 20 yards, and then I head out to the range and set it to 50 or 100 yards, whatever I'm wanting, and it works really well. It always gets me within a foot or a foot and a half of bullseye, so it works pretty well. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back soon with some more videos. I still have some handguns from the Cold War era that I want to cover, and then eventually I will get into more rifle stuff, surplus rifles, and starting back around World War II, even pre-World War I, some of my stuff. So thanks for watching, have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys later.